This is the important stuff. This is where we get the leverage, gain speed, and fortify testing for the length of the project. I'm going to show you how easy it is to run a test. We do this on the command line. Most of the people in this program have used the command line, and the people that I work with use it too. With just a short bit of typing, I'm going to invoke the default behavior of the script. It starts with one sort of abracadabra word here, node. Node is a JavaScript runtime that works particularly well for this type of testing. Typing node just ensures that the next argument, k8autotest.js, is run as a program in that node runtime. Now the file that my test uses is k8_autotest.js. That's just the file that has all the instructions for how to actually run this test. Slack is the messaging system that's going to get the results of this test, and Capstone, or Cap, is the project in Slack that actually gets the information at the end. I'll show you this at the end, and we'll run through that really quickly, but it's just a messaging system similar to an instant messenger, and I'll show you what that looks like. So here we go. We just type these words in, and they invoke the default behavior, which is to choose a browser and open it up. And it happens quite quickly. You'll see that once I hit enter here, it's going to pop open a browser, and a lot of things are going to happen so fast that I'm going to have difficulty describing them. So right here, I'm going to make this bigger for you so you can see it a little bit better. We've already done a bunch of testing. We checked what browser is open because by default it says, okay, you're on a Mac, you didn't tell me what browser you want, so I'm assuming Chrome. Then we're going to go off and we're going to actually log a little bit of data to a file, so when we come back we have a kind of a reference point. We've checked that the server is accepting requests, that the status is healthy, it's serving up HTML pages. And it's already gone through a lot of things. You'll see here it's logged in, it started creating things, and we know what the browser version is, and we're recording it as we go, saying, okay, this is a particular version of Chrome, so we need to write that to the console every time. We're going to create a class to use and put students in. And every page that this hits, there are many, many, many tests of HTML elements. And we're checking for the important things like what HTML attributes and values that matter to us, the IDs, the classes, and the texts. Those are meaningful in determining whether or not the page is properly constructed. And it interacts with the page too, entering inputs, filling fields out, selecting drop-downs. Here it's filled out a form and it's hit save or hit next, and the server went off and created some data and came back, and very quickly it grabbed what the username was and entered it in and logged it in as it. And quite quickly it goes to things like calendars and creates assignments and exercises the HTML and the server very well so that we know that we're getting back what we expect on every page in every different browser that we test with. At the end of the test, it cleans itself up. It goes off and archives the class. This is actually a feature of the application, but we test it, and it also gets rid of this extraneous data by archiving it. It checks for students, it checks for students that don't exist, and then at the end it just reports all this to the console, and I'll talk a little bit about that, and then we'll get to the Slack part. So opening this up for you a little bit better here. It's gone off and it's run not 100, 1,500 tests. And these specific tests can have errors, so we know if there are any errors in that list. And sometimes there are. Today we didn't get any. The code's been well exercised. The failed tests would be listed here. And then below that, a more human-readable list of what features we're actually testing. Now I wanted the green text here to list out clearly with visual information what features are actually working. The ability to log in as a particular user, create a particular user, use a particular access code needs to come to the forefront as something that was successful and give it focus to the person who has run the test at the end. As well, we want to list out what features weren't tested. We need that contrast between what we have tested and what remains to be tested when those features are implemented, so that we don't give the misimpression that everything is rosy, hunky-dory before we've actually had a chance to look at those things. Now finally, we roll this all up in a little summary with the details of the execution. What particular sprint we were working on at this time, that's how we organize our team time. What URL it was run against. Was it run against sales or demo server or production or a staging server or QA, which is where it should be run most of the time. We list out the browser that we used, and we also list the book. Now, one thing I didn't show you is that we can actually specify what book is run, because that's different data. Its sixth grade book would be book 6, but we could have used any of 1 through 8. And that just picks a different object with all the text strings and IDs and classes associated with that particular book. Now let's take a quick look at Slack here. The automation results channel has a QA director or a QA engineer look at the details of the execution of this test with all of the tests that passed, with a little dartboard icon next to them, and all of the skipped tests for posterity recorded there. Now this too has at the bottom the summary data. Now that summary data is what we saw in the command line, but it's also what's going to go to this channel here, which is the build auto test. Now this is more for a project manager or a CEO or CTO to see, okay, it was tested on this date with this information. Again, all those details that we liked, like the sprint that it was on, or in this case, that it was tested on Windows NT on this date, or Safari 11 on this date. Most of those will happen every day, but they don't necessarily need to. So here you go, that's the little concise data there, and it's just a repeat of this. It runs in 2 minutes and 15 seconds. It is probably 43 minutes of savings right there. It gives them a really good sense that the build is working, that we haven't lost functionality, that we have a robust quality process out there for making sure that features still work.